Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Thanks for viewing my video. In this video I'm going to do the Snob-O-Meter tag. I was tagging videos by Pat at Book Chat with Pat and Suey at Suey's Book Banter. Thank you both for tagging me. I'm going to repeat what they said to properly credit the creator of this tag. The Snob-O-Meter tag. This is a terrific new original tag created by That Reading Guy 28. This has 12 prompts. The first prompt is, what is your definition of book snobbery? My definition is thinking you're better than somebody because of the books you read that they don't read, or thinking that they're inferior to you because they read certain books that you think shouldn't be read. That's basically it. The second prompt is there a genre or type of book you would never consider reading, such as, would you ever read a romance? Or if you regularly read romance, would you ever try a science fiction novel? First, I do read lots of romances, and in my youth I read a lot of science fiction, not so much anymore, but occasionally I do. I wouldn't say that I would never read any type of book, but Storygraph does show that one genre that I've read very little is political books. I've only read one book that they classify as political. That book is Bullshit Jobs, A Theory by Dave Graeber. And that's on 3 years I'm being on Storygraph. I will say this, that there's one thing I avoid, and just be candid about this. I don't want to read a book from someone who strongly puts forth an opinion I disagree with, unless I can believe that they have arrived at that viewpoint by a logical progression without bias, and I don't know how I can ever really know that. So those are books that that's not really a specific genre, it's part of a genre, but those are books that I probably would not read. The third prompt is, does erotica count as literature? I'm making an assumption here that literature doesn't just mean any book. That literature means books that would, say, be considered by those who judge such things, which is probably English academics at colleges, judge what is worthy of being worth their notice, if that makes sense. So I am interpreting the term literature as meaning that. Even taken to that account, I would say that erotica could be considered literature. I'm not sure what the dividing line is between books that are considered erotica, or books that are considered spicy, or books that are considered essentially porn in written form. Old-fashioned term, but I'm sure such books still exist. I don't really know what the dividing line is, but I do think that in any genre, an erotica could be one that they should be considered literature. I'm not sure if a book like Lolita, which I have never read, is considered erotica. But if it is, I believe that it is considered worthy of being considered literature, worthy of being considered a classic. So possibly that's one example. The fourth prompt is it better to read classic books than popular bestsellers? No. I mean, basically just no. It's best to read what books you want to read, books you think you should enjoy. I don't think people should read books based upon some idea of what they think they're supposed to read for whatever reason, to limit their reading because of that. I think people should read books that they think they're going to enjoy. you could get into if authors are problematic or whatever. I'm not going to get into that. That's you can certainly make that decision. That's your right, and you should. I should probably do a better job at doing that, being more aware. But you should read what you think you want to read because you think you're going to enjoy it. That's basically it. If it's classics, if it's popular books, whatever. The fifth prompt is, have you ever bragged about reading classic in order to sound smart? The answer, as far as I can remember, is no. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I am highly intelligent and I don't feel a need to convince people of that. If they can't recognize that, then I don't view that as my problem. And I wouldn't read a specific book to try to convince people. The sixth prompt is, do audiobooks count as reading? What about comic books or graphic novels? Audiobooks do count. My experience, of course, is only mine, different from others. The audiobooks I've read, I feel my comprehension is just as good as reading physical books or ebooks. Now, I will say that when I read audiobooks, I should say, I don't want to touch too much on the reading versus listening thing. Typically, when I talk about audiobooks, I say I listen to them as opposed to reading them. It's a kind of a, perhaps a minor point, but a lot of people say they read audiobooks. Technically, you listen to audiobooks. So early in this prompt, I think I said read, but I actually listen to them. I have no problem if people want to say they read them, but I just say I listen to them. But when I do listen to audiobooks, I do just sit and listen to them. Quiet, same as when I read a book in my room mostly. And I know for many people, audiobooks, they listen to them, say, when doing chores around the house, they're going for a walk or a jog, they're driving to work, maybe riding home on the bus, whatever. And so their comprehension might not be as good as reading a physical book or a ebook, but mine is. And I will say too, the ones I've read, I haven't researched the narrators. I've been fortunate the narrators are good. I know that I've heard a lot of people talk about audiobooks, and a poor narrator can ruin the experience. I just haven't encountered that. It's something I should investigate before I get an audiobook. And the second part of that is, what about comic books or graphic novels? Yes, I consider their reading too. I will say this, though, that I think I would say of course, as a kid, I read a lot of comic books, and then after that, occasional graphic novel or comic. But from about 95 to 2008, I was collecting comics. Again, there was a local shop, and the owner he had a list. You could say what comics you want to get. The owner pulled. He pulled them for me, and I get those comics. I read a bunch of comics, and the one thing I will say that when people read comics or audiobooks, they really should try to kind of take in the art. Don't just rush through on the words, because if you rush through on the words, you're going to be getting through those books so quickly that you may not be getting your money's worth out of it. So I really think you should take the time, soak in the art, enjoy the art. And that way, if you do that, I think you'll really be getting your money's worth out of it, more so than if you just fly through the words. Because you could read a comic, there are 22, 24 pages. You could read probably 5 or 10 minutes if you didn't take in the art. So take in the art and enjoy it. The seventh prompt is, have you ever looked down at someone for reading a popular fluff book with little substance to it, for example, a self-help book or celebrity memoir? I read a fair amount of celebrity memoirs, and I read some self-help books, so I don't look on people for reading the same things as I do. I have my flaws, but hypocrisy isn't one of them. I do quite enjoy them. I would say that there are memoirs that are fairly deep and discuss some important topics, but I won't get into that here. I just say that I read them myself. I'm not going to look down on people for reading them also. Now, this isn't really exactly, I suppose it could be considered fluff, I don't know, but not exactly this, but there are a couple of occasions when I would look down upon somebody. I'm going to come clean about this. I think the majority of people would probably do the same as I'm talking about it, but they might not admit it to themselves or others. I do look down upon someone when they're reading a book that puts forth the belief in some topic which I hold a strongly different belief than. In that case, I do look down upon this person. I'm not particularly proud of it, but that's just the reality. There's a lot of things these days that are very divisive. If I'm on one side and I see somebody reading a book that promotes the other side, I probably am going to look down upon them. That's just the reality of the matter. And the other time I would look down upon somebody is that if they're reading a book that, it'd have to be a nonfiction book, but that promoted harming others in some way. I do not have examples of this. I'm not even sure what it would be called, but they're reading a book that promoted harming people or animals. I would look down upon them for that. The 8th prompt is, have you ever been the recipient of someone else's snobbery? The answer to that is surprisingly no. Not in my offline life and not in my online life here on BookTube and on Instagram, which I talk some about books too. I have not been the recipient of that. There is no way for me to know whether someone in their mind, when they see a video and they think, well, geez, why is he reading that? Shouldn't be reading that book. I can't know that. But I've never even got an inkling that somebody might think that. They might well. I mean, I don't even know most of the people who watch my videos. But nobody has, to my face or in comments or whatever, said that to me. The 9th prompt is, would you ever be friends with a snob? Maybe you already are. This goes beyond book snob. It goes to who I want to interact with in my life now. I'm 66 and I'm very, very protective of how I spend my time. I can't say I wouldn't let someone in my life who's a book snob, but if the time I'm spending with them, they're going to question what I'm doing and going to try to argue with me, tell me I should be doing something different, I'm not going to spend time with them. I'm just not going to. It's not worth my time or effort. I just won't do it. I spend a good lot of my life listening to people talk about things I disagree with, and I figure I paid my penance to that. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm not aware of any of my friends who are snobs. People seem to be supportive of my choices, not only in books, but in other things. So, again, I can't be sure what somebody is thinking to themselves. There's no way for me to know if they don't tell me, but I'm not aware of any snobs. Actually, a fair amount of people in my life aren't readers, or if they are, they read differently enough than me that there's really not too much to discuss. The 10th prompt is, are people who don't read less sophisticated than people who do? I would say no. I mean, there's other ways to be sophisticated. Of course, you have to define what sophisticated means, but to me, there's other ways. For instance, I think a person would be sophisticated if they're very knowledgeable of, say, the art world and art. A person can become knowledgeable about a topic by watching documentaries, listening to maybe podcasts, whatever. There's other ways to become knowledgeable about topics and become sophisticated. I don't think a person has to read to become sophisticated. I do believe, though, that the best way to acquire knowledge is reading. Or, again, I talked earlier about audiobooks. At least for me, audiobooks would be good too, although they're not quite as good for nonfiction for me. So maybe not quite as good in this area. But so I do think that reading, listening maybe to books is the best way to learn. Or it could be reading magazines or newspapers, whatever. But I do think it's the best way. But I don't think it's right to say the only way to be a sophisticated person is to read. The 11th prompt is measure yourself based on your answers to the previous 10 questions. Would you qualify as a book snob? No, I say not remotely qualify. The only thing, as I said, the only little bit of snobbery is if someone is reading a book that I hold a strongly different opinion about. But as I said, I suspect a majority of us do that. So, but really, that's just one area. And as I said, I think lots of people do that. So, in the other areas, I wouldn't. The 12th prompt is tag some people. I will first say, if you're watching this video, please consider yourself tagged. If you like to, please do a video with your answer to these prompts or reply to one or more of my comments. But I am going to tag a bunch of people in the description of the video. Again, even with those people, if you like to do it, please do so. If you wouldn't, certainly no expectation if you don't want it. It is a thought-provoking one, though, so kind of an interesting one. Normally I do these tags in order, but that I get them. But this one I just saw really recently a couple times by Pat and Suey, and it's just one when I was watching, I had a lot of thoughts, so I figured I'd do it and bypass the others and get back to them later. Thank you to Pat and Suey for tagging me. Thank you for at that Reading Guide 28 for coming up with this tag. It was an interesting one. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you're having a wonderful reading week, and I hope you're having a wonderful week in general.